All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get ourselves started. So, hello, my name is John Ryan Zabinel, and I am your host for this wonderful conference that we put together. This is day 3 of 3, and it has been absolutely phenomenal. So, I'm looking forward to closing this conference and sharing all this wonderful information with you. But I'm also the Director of String Music Education at the Vandercook College of Music, and I'm here with my wonderful colleagues, Victor Fernandez, who's our tech guy, Shauna St. John, and Glenda Leiter, who are with Nat King Cole Generation Hope Organization. So if you're just joining in, if this is your first day, just a little bit about what we're doing here. Last fall, Nat King Cole and I began to plan for a summer string camp for the Chicago area students who have the fewest resources. So as schools and businesses shut down last spring, the prospect of in-person camp began to fade. And we started to think about more, as we started to think more about the camp, we decided that accessibility to internet and instruments would be a major issue. So we started to think about how can we help those who have the most direct influence on the students, which is you all, their teachers. So first, I'd like to thank Nat King Cole Generation Hope for helping me put this conference together. I would also like to thank the clinicians for volunteering their time to put together this information and present for us. And I'd also like to thank you all, the teachers, for taking the time to sit in. So as you're getting yourself situated, just a few general procedures. Please make sure that your cameras and microphones are off. Please set your conference view to speaker or gallery view, depending whether you're on a desktop, a laptop, or on a mobile device. We are making the chat available to everyone today, so please make sure that you keep communication, respectful and collegial and relevant to the presentation that's occurring. We are recording this session, which will be available at the Nat King Cole Generation Hope website. Additionally, clinician handouts and slides will be posted too. We will also be offering a conference completion certificate next week that will be emailed out to those who have logged in with us today. I knew Charles Laux for the past, I guess it's been over a decade now. He was a doctoral student at Ohio State when I was an undergrad, so I'm really excited to invite him back here and to have him share his wonderful information to you all. So without any further ado, Dr. Charles Laux, it's all yours.
Thank you, John Ryan. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a long time, and I'm honored to be here today to be able to present and share some information with you. I hope you all had a great summer. And, there's a lot of questions as to us going back to school. I know personally, I'll be going back to high school digitally this fall. And so there's a lot of preparations to make. But I know there's a lot of questions. So I'm hoping the information I'll give you today will be useful for you as far as being able to use it both if you are digital or if you are face-to-face. So that was kind of my goal, is to give you some strategies and some ideas and make you think maybe differently about how your students practice. So I'm gonna go ahead and start sharing my screen, and that way we will be able to just kind of go through and talk about all the great things that we do. So hopefully you should all see my screen now. It's kind of been a topic that's been very near and dear to my heart, especially in the last few years, as I've discovered that my students are having a hard time finding time to practice because, nowadays kids are trying to do it all. They're trying to be high academics, and they do athletics, and they want to do the arts, and they're just very, very busy kids. And I think the parents, help cater to that a little bit as well. So my students in my situation, I'll just share that real quick. I teach at Alpharetta High School in Alpharetta, Georgia. We're about 20 minutes north of downtown Atlanta. And
get rid of this.
I have 5 levels of orchestra, and we everything from students who really struggle with very fundamental like instrument position and tone production to students who last year I had a student audition for Juilliard, and I have another one going to Yale this year. So I have students and then everything in between. So I love that diversity. It's a very diverse school in terms of SES, ethnicity, and everything else. So it's just wonderful school, and I get to still teach almost beginners through my chamber orchestra, which they play pretty much whatever they want. So I love that diversity. So as far as our students practicing, see if I can't get to, for some reason, my thing is not advancing. My presentation is not advancing, and I cannot click on anything or do anything. I'm gonna stop sharing and try and redo this one more time. It was working perfectly, of course, in our test run today, but then, we start. Gotta love the technology.
Murphy's at work today.
Can everybody see my screen now? All right. And okay. So our problem is when our students are not with us, they might end up playing incorrectly. And hopefully your students aren't this bad, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we are taking care of them and doing all that we can to give them the tools at home. When I was an undergraduate, I had a wonderful professor named Howard Beebe. He was a Juilliard-trained violinist and a teacher there for a long time at Ohio University. And his whole goal from the day I stepped into his studio as a freshman was to make me my own independent practicer, my own independent musician, so that I could do what I need to do without him or without anybody else's help. And so we want to try to instill that value into our students. Obviously, a lot of our students are not going to be professional musicians or teachers, but we hope that when they leave our programs, whether it's middle school or high school, that they're accomplished and they're ready to be able to tackle their own problems, their own music, and be comprehensive musicians on their own. So those are the tools that we're trying to give them. Once again, I cannot advance my presentation. I have no idea why that's happening. Oh, there we go. I guess I'll just click. Okay. So the quote, your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. So I always talk to my students about, it's not, I don't care how much you practice. It's not about whether you are a natural or not. It's about your attitude and how you apply yourself. So we want to try to instill that in our students as well. So we'll start with a few things, essential items that every student needs. Obviously, adequate space. And you'd be surprised, some of my students at home, they do not have an adequate space to practice. So we want to try to make sure that not only the students know what they need, but parents need to know what the student needs to practice. Privacy. I've had students that don't have their own room and have a hard time, finding a place to practice. Good lighting, a quiet environment, place where they can focus. A chair, especially for your cellists. I have a lot of my cellists playing off their bed and been way too long, things like that. So it seems like, as a trained musician, it seems like, oh, everybody has these things. It's kind of a no-brainer, but at the same time, if you start beginners or have parents that have never done music before, they have no idea what the students need. A music stand. I've had a lot of interesting videos come back to me where students are taping music to their wall or whatever it might be. So just some very fundamental things. A pencil and then a tuner metronome. And, my students, well, I don't have a metronome. It's like, well, you have a phone? Yes. Okay. You have a metronome. So guide them to those right tools. But I also highly encourage students to have some type of instrument stand or way to mount their instrument so it's available, and then a mirror. And I'll show you, oh, I guess I don't have it on there. The instrument stand, something that you can put a cello in and leave it out of its case, so that way the students can practice it easier. Or I have wall hangers for my violins and my viola, and I can leave them out and a way for when students are at home. When it's in their case, they kind of forget about their instrument, but I tell them, if you hang up your instrument and it's looking at you every time you walk in your room, you're going to pick up the instrument, you're going to practice it. So that just some way for them to store their instrument safely, but make it accessible, especially like on a weekend. I tell them, go home and hang your instrument up, and every time you walk in your room, I want you to practice for 5 minutes or 2 minutes, or that lick that you're having trouble with in your music. See if you can nail it from cold. See if you can get it cold. Those are the kind of things that we wanted to instill in our students, just to make it, we want to build good habits. So what do we think we need about how to practice? Students aren't concerned about practicing. They only want to do well in a performance. They're concerned about their outcome, not the process. And I don't think, in general, what I found is students just generally don't know how to practice. They practice incorrectly and develop a lot of bad habits. You hear, when I listen to students practicing from afar, you hear them repeating the same mistake, the same mistake, the same mistake. So now we're working with our students so that they can develop those good habits. And this is what today is all about. So here are the bad habits. What do students do? They start a new piece at the performance tempo. start playing the Bach, the Bach double, da 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 da. Well, hold on a second. Da 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 da. Oh wait, da 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 da. No, let's slow down. Start a quarter of the tempo. If you can play at that tempo, then you work your way up, right? So they start too fast. They slop through and they get half the notes right, and they think that they're practicing it. Well, I tell them every time you play a wrong note and you keep playing wrong notes, you're just reinforcing bad behavior, bad training. Okay, and going back to the hard spots and slowing down only a little bit. We have to take those hard spots and break them down so that it's super easy to play, and you're going to be successful every single time. And then repeating mistakes, solving those bad habits. Anyways, it's a kind of a psychological thing when we keep repeating mistakes. So there's a couple resources that I'll share. All the slides for my presentation are on orchestrateacher.net. That is my website. That's where I have everything. And you can download them, and there's everything I've ever done is on orchestrateacher.net. So if you would like these slides, they're there. But the resources, one of them is called The Musician's Way. It's a book by Gerald Klickstein. It's a really great resource. It's kind of in depth. I would say it's geared more at the advanced player, but you could take some of the concepts and break them down for your beginners. He has 5 zones: new material, developed material, performance material, technique, and musicianship. And however you decide that you're going to work with your students, if you're teaching orchestra or private lessons, you can think about these different zones and getting kids to take time to practice in each area a little bit. And that way they're building not just one thing, but they're building all their, whether it's repertoire and techniques and musicianship skills all at one time. So for planning practice, we want to divide we want to find our new material, and then we want to divide that into sections and have a plan. So when we take out a new piece of music, if you're an orchestra teacher and you're taking out a new piece and giving it out to your students, I say definitely sign it in small sections. I like to use my rehearsal markers and say, okay, this week we're going to be working on the introduction from the beginning to letter A. That's it. And we master that section. And then the following week, we take the next section, and then we start putting 2 sections together. But come up with some kind of plan. As you plan your lesson plans, you say, well, we're working on, canon and D. Well, no, we're going to work on this section or this section, and break it down, slow it down, right? So really you want to have your students planning the practice, figuring out what they want to work on. Developing the material. So in developing material, that's where we're going to refer interpretation, start talking about dynamics, maybe memorizing some sections, all right? And then we go on to our performance material. This is where we're going to actually, when we have something polished, we're going to actually practice performing that material. So it's something like, we have a piece down. Now let's see if we can play it all the way through. Or if you have something that you've learned and you've put it away for a little while, break it out and have them go into that maintenance mode and practice running through it to see if it's still up to snuff and if you're still able to do that. Okay. And then as far as your techniques, obviously, I hope all of you continue to work on techniques, even during busy festival or contest season, working on those techniques and driving home your scales and arpeggios, and then going a step further and maybe taking 2 minutes out of a rehearsal, even if it's busy, take 2 minutes and do some vibrato exercises or some other technical exercises, because it's very easy for us when we get into that performance and we're like 3 weeks or 2 weeks away from a concert to like just put all the technique aside and just drill our music. But we have to keep that technique going. Very important. And then as far as musicianship goes, I think it's really important for us to develop students who can be creative and understand music from something where they're going to be able to take the material and do their thing. If every time we dictate to our students, you must do a crescendo here, you must do a decrescendo here, we're doing a real injustice to them, because we're telling them how it's supposed to go and not giving them that option of what do you think. And so when we put something in our music, or we see something, or maybe there's nothing in our music, no dynamics, and I'll ask for students' input, opinions. Where do you think? What should we do here? What could we do here? How do we need to phrase it? So we need to develop that. And some ways you can do that are by listening. For each of my orchestra classes, I have a specific YouTube playlist that I make for them. I find the greatest performances of pieces that we're working on, or pieces that are in the same style, or anything that kind of relates. And I'll make a YouTube playlist, and I'll share that link with them on a Google Classroom or whatever I'm using to administer my classes. And I tell my students, I said, when you're doing your math homework, your English homework, whatever other homework you have, put on your YouTube playlist and listen to it, because it'll kind of sink in. Students need that model. They need that something to kind of get them through. In addition to that, practicing sight reading regularly. Little things like Sight Reading Factory will give you like a 4-measure sight reading excerpt you can print out for all of your students, or put up on your board. That's what I do. And I put up a treble line, an alto line, and a bass line. We play together, and it's a 4-measure thing. We do a little sight reading, a few times a week, and it really helps them build those skills. And I'll say this now, when we teach orchestra virtually and we're online, we're doing remote learning, we can't do orchestra the way we know we do orchestra, right? And so all that time that you say when you're busy with working on concert music, oh, how I would love for my students to learn more music theory, or how I would love my students to get better at ear training, or maybe improvisation. This is the time when we're teaching virtually that we can work on some of these musicianship skills that we just don't have time for when we're in class. So think about ways that you can implement different drills, exercises, exploring music history, all kinds of these things to develop your musicianship skills for your students. Okay, as we pick materials, we want to keep them relevant. We want to keep them a place where they won't feel like they're overwhelmed. Students will not practice music that they think is too hard. They get discouraged. So we need to keep them in what we call that zone of proximal development. Okay, students, the zone is, if you look at a little graph there, students can learn things on their own, and then there are certain things that are beyond their reach. But there's just that fine line that we have to find for each of our classes. Now, every student's going to be different, but we have to try to find that fine line where students will be feeling that they're reaching for something new, and maybe learn with a little bit of help, but something that's not going to overwhelm them. So as you're choosing your materials, your music, your solo music, if you're doing, I'm going to be doing a lot of individualized and solo playing during our online learning here at the beginning of the year. I want to try to find pieces that are something that they can start working on their own, but maybe they need a little bit of my help. That's why I'm here, but something that's not beyond their reach. So got to keep it positive, and we have to keep it so that they're motivated to want to do it. Time is the enemy, progress is the goal. Students are crunched for time, like I said earlier. What we have to teach students to make best use of your time. And I always tell them, my quote is, if you're practicing and you sound really good, you're practicing the wrong parts. So are you spending time with your instrument, or are you practicing your instrument? So we have to make sure that students aren't just going through the motions saying, oh, well, I practiced, I'm done now. We really want to make it meaningful for them, okay? Keeping that positive attitude, but when we have to talk about playing something, we have to talk about practicing something, and getting to instill that difference of those two entities with our students. But when I've had face-to-face classes, I'd take a portion of my rehearsal, and I would let the kids go into small groups or even individual, and whether 30 seconds or 5 minutes, I would give them many practice times where they can drill themselves, work on something, slow it down, and then we come back together and start our rehearsal again. So don't be afraid to take some of your rehearsal time and turn it into a little practice session. It works pretty well. So practice logs, assignments. If you look at the practice log I have, the logging of minutes really does not prevent healthy practice. I find mainly that practice logs are essentially a bunch of lies. Because when I was in high school, we were supposed to practice 30 minutes a day. And, I've put 30 minutes on every day. And of course, I was that diligent student that did not practice 30 minutes a day. But of course, I was lying. And then, the worst part is that my parents would sign the thing, and they know for a fact that I did not practice the 30 minutes a day. So we have to be careful about forcing minutes on something, because you're going to have your students your rock star kids who can learn what you're working on in 5 minutes, and they're like, 5 minutes, they got the piece. And then you have your students who just struggle and need that more time, and they're going to take 50 minutes or more to learn the same thing. So we have to make our practicing goal based and not minutes based. You'll find that your students will appreciate that as well. So building good habits. Here's what we need to do. So remember that it takes time. You're not going to get your students to be great practicers in 2 weeks. It may take you the whole school year, but if you focus on habits, that power habit where you provide a cue and then you get them into routine, and then try to find some way to reward them, whether it's external award, an intrinsic award, something that will help just guide them and motivate them to develop those good habits, right? So the cue starts the habit, the reward motivates them to continue doing that. Study I read states that building a good habit takes an average of 66 days, 66 continuous days. That's probably why I don't work out, like I should, because I haven't gotten in that habit of doing it for 66 days straight. But I need to do that. And we must schedule it. So whether the students are morning people and they'll practice before school or before they start, or they're night owls and they want to practice late at night with a practice mute. A lot of my students, I find they will submit some of their practice and playing tests very late at night. And maybe it's procrastination, but I think it's a lot of time it's just they do the other schoolwork first and they put their orchestra work at the end. So you have to figure out what works for your students and have them do that. So let's get into some practice strategies. A lot of these are ones that are used in the classroom. That's kind of what I geared towards when I was making this presentation, but we can also adapt some of these to work in the virtual world as well. So the slower is faster. I think it was Isaac Stern that said, someone asked him how he could play so fast, and he said, I can play faster because I practice the slowest. I'm the world's slowest practicer. And we have to instill that in our students. So remind your students if they start with a tempo that will allow them near perfection on the very first try, that's the right tempo. And until they can master it at that tempo, we work our way up. So going slower is faster. Identify the problem prior to practicing. Write in the music, bracket the problem areas. I have my students to instead of doing practice logs, I do a practice blog, a video blog. So with that, there are two parts. The first part of the practice log is a document, and I was using Google Docs. I would create the document and share it with all the students. And in that document, they had put their name down, but I made a template for them. And each week I would ask different questions. Maybe it was, what are your goals for this week? And then I would write out what some example goals could be, because students don't think about maybe tone as a goal, improving my sound or intonation. So I would list some different things for them to think about. How are you going to do that? I would ask a question and they would fill in their answers. And provide some areas in your music or excerpts or whatever of what you're working on and things like that. So I would kind of create a little template for them to fill out. So that was part one. Part two of the assignment is they'd have to submit a 5-minute practice sample of their practicing. And I told them I didn't want to hear it sound good. You're not turning in a playing test. I don't grade it based on how good you sound. I'm grading it basically it was a completion grade along with the document grade, but it was so that I could see them practicing. I could see the wheels turning. I love watching the wheels turn and them start to just figure out. And then I could see, if they were using some good practice habits or not, practice strategies or not. And I could go back and give them some tips on how to be a better practicer, just based upon what I see. Now, 5-minute videos, and I have 150 students. I don't watch all 5 minutes because I would be there for days, right? Yeah. So I would watch the beginning a little bit, and then you can scroll, watch a little bit of the middle, watch a few seconds at the end, and by the time you're done, you know what they're kind of working on. Watch out for those students who will try to pull fast on you and record 5 minutes of play for 30 seconds and then just record 5 minutes of nothing. I've had a couple of those. Anyways, just you can kind of scroll through and get an idea. But you learn a lot about students and how they play just by watching them practice. So, and if they start turning in videos of them sounding really good, I tell them that you're not practicing the right parts, right? So write in the music, identify problem areas, going through and just marking parts in the music. I always share my scores with my students in addition to their own music. So I'll share a score digitally with them on Google Classroom, and I'll highlight parts in each section and have them have to go back into my score and look for those parts. That way they're looking through the score, and looping those problem areas. But we have to make those kids, we have to get them consistent in doing this over and over and over the right way. Practicing backwards, right? Ever have a hard lick and you can't play it forwards, but wow, if you take it backwards, it really helps you think about the shifts and all that stuff, what you have to do. So this is just an example of, hearing the intervals, especially when you're descending. Descending intervals are hard for students to hear, but if they hear it ascending first, they can go back and forth on those notes and they start hearing those intervals backwards too. So backwards practice, great practicing strategy. Share these with your students. Make a list of how many practice strategies you want them to work on a particular week. Give them 3. Say, use these 3 practice strategies this week, right? Finding those repetitive sections to save time. We're not going to repeat the sections that, and repeat sections we've already worked on. So this also helps students understand form. When they see, oh, I played this and I played something different. I played this again, but I played something different. Now they've already figured out rondo form, or et cetera, et cetera. So you can, teach form through that way too. One of the things I've used a lot in terms of intonation is students will play for me and I'll tell them to match my note, and they're playing, I'm playing, they're matching a note, it's totally wrong, and they're looking at me waiting for my approval. Keep waiting for it. It's not right. I said, close your eyes, play softer. Now play it. All of a sudden, with their eyes closed and they start playing softer, their ears open up and they start playing it in tune. They're playing the right thing. So that's a great practice strategy, just playing softer and closing your eyes, taking away that visual. Recording themselves, obviously, it's great for self-assessment. We all know that we think we sound one way, and then we record ourselves and we sound a different way. So have students address certain areas of their playing. Maybe have them focus on tone and intonation, or just rhythm and articulations one week. So they can start isolating and hearing very specific aspects and elements of their playing rather than the big picture. They give you that generic answer, well, I sounded bad or I sounded good. That's not enough. We need more descriptive description of how we're playing and self-assessment. Video, obviously great for bow angles and bow holds and all that. And position work, shifting, vibrato. When you take your video, you can, repeat it and watch it back. So I love the app called Coach's Eye. It's a tool for people in athletics, but it works great. It's an app for Android and iOS, but definitely check that out. I think it's a few dollars to purchase a pro version. It gives you more tools to use. But if you record your students, once a year or twice a year with that Coach's Eye app, work on the angles of the arm and the wrist motion. You can see all that. You can slow it down. You can scrub through it. You can play it backwards. Lots of great things to use with Coach's Eye. So definitely check that out if you get a chance. Write it down is another strategy. Pencils on the stand. Everybody's marking all the things: tempo, key, fingerings. I tell my students, go and watch a professional rehearsal and see how many times the professional picks up their pencil and marks something. Why do they do that? Because they get only a couple rehearsals to get everything down, and there's no going back. So you have to make sure that everything's marked, because you're not going to remember everything that you have to do. So mark it before you practice and mark it during practice. This is one that a lot of people use, but rhythmic variation. You have a tough lick, like those triplets maybe. You can take the rhythmic variation and change it to an 8th and 2/16th, 8th, 2/16th. You can do that for a 16th note excerpt as well, and then change it backwards. So what you're doing is you're kind of putting little bursts of speed in there, and you're learning the note changes faster, but you don't realize, but you have time kind of to think about it in between. So the other book that I've referenced a lot in this session is called Practicing with Purpose by David Kish. It's a really great book. It's got about maybe 40 different practice strategies. Some of those I'm sharing with you. I couldn't possibly get to all of them, but it's just a great book. Even a good enough book for your students to own and purchase. Next, use your voice. Singing. It's hard to get kids singing if they haven't sung before. But if you're teaching beginners, I can't stress enough, have your kids sing from day one. They will think it's a little bit weird at first, but if it becomes their habit, they won't. Let you internalize the pitch. You can do rhythms. You can have good articulations. So much easier to do articulations with your mouth, like staccato or legato. You can do your vocal inflections that way. It's a lot easier to do with your voice than it is with the bow. So then once they've done it with their voice, it's a little bit easier to transfer to the bow that way. Okay, so using your voice, very important. Shadow bow, air bow. I think I have a video here. Oh, I just passed it. Try that again. Okay, this is the way.
It is important to continue practicing and reinforcing the playing techniques from the previous videos. Additionally, as our practice with Catherine.
So what we're going to do is we're going to isolate skills by having your students at first naming notes, pointing to notes, and then they're going to isolate the left hand just by itself, then isolate the right hand, and then put it together. So just isolating skills.
You will hear 4 clicks before the music starts.
And then we skip ahead.
And shape.
So then they're pizzicatoing. But still singing. Right?
Music while.
And then we shadow bow and sing. And then finally we put it together, left hand, right hand. Okay, so taking away and isolating it. That video came from Essential Elements Interactive, free web companion to the Essential Elements method. Check it out. There's a lot of great features coming. A couple I can't tell you about yet, but some really impactful things within Essential Elements Interactive. Next, finding a model. I have my students. I try to find a model, find an idol, someone who you just love listening to. A lot of my cellists will find Yo-Yo Ma or 2 cellos or whatever. Josh Bell. There's all kinds of great artists out there that people can become obsessed with, and you want your students to be able to find someone that they can model and just get inspired from. Okay. It's also cool to have your students start listening critically and comparing those two. And I find that it just helps them get a better understanding of interpretation and tone quality, all those different things, style, phrasing. So find a model for your students. Obviously, that you're going to be doing a lot of this, whether you're doing Zoom or Google Meet, but record stuff and put it online.
Finger patterns.
Simple. Just to give them that model. Put up some things on a YouTube channel, in post to Canvas or whatever you're using. But the more they can see you playing, the more they have models with them, especially at home, the better, I think. So modeling, as we know, is the number one teaching strategy. Going back to basics, you can remove, if you have things that have lots of complex slurs or ties or other articulations, just strip it out and play the notes slowly, and then add in one thing at a time. Add in slurs, and then add in ties, and add in articulations. But strip everything down and go back to basics. I call it pizziarco, but anything that you have that's difficult, whether it's string crossings, take the bow away, have them pizzicato those sections. Like there's this little cello thing here. Kind of challenging with the string crossings, right? So if they take it out, they pizzicato it. Then you can take away the left hand and just have them try to figure out what the string crossings are by bowing it, then put it together, right? Isolate. And if the same thing is true with pizzicato things, sometimes it's easier to take a pizzicato section and put a bow on it. But going back and forth that way, sometimes very helpful. Target notes. When we have some fast licks and we're trying to keep in time, I try to have students find that downbeat or another series of beats that will help keep them in line. So here's just a little video of me teaching target notes. And this is from can't think of the tune right now.
Looks like Night on Bald Mountain or something.
Bald Mountain.
C
Thank you.
sharp.
Night on Bald Mountain.
Ready, your turn.
Finding that
This is
C
to
sharp.
line up these eighth notes. Ready, and go. And. Now do that measure. That's right. Right, we're coming back up. 2, ready, and go. And. Open A is easy to find, right? This is so we don't get lost. One more time. 2, ready, C sharp and down. Now the next one, we're going to freeze on the F natural. Starting on open A, ready, and go E. And up. One more time, ready, and.
So we're just trying to find those target notes, and so then they land on them. They're waiting for them, and I tell them, you know, if we're playing this and it's really fast and you're behind, skip a note, hit that target note. It's not going to do anybody any good if you're behind by a couple of notes, but if we can land all those target notes, we're going to be better off. So yeah, a little tricky chromatic lick there from Night on Bald Mountain. All right, so add a note is another strategy where we're just getting students to learn difficult passages by getting the timing and adding one note at a time. So I'll show you how I did that.
Breathe. Well, let's start up bow. And breathe. Go. Good, now we're going to add that note. 2, ready, and move, and go. Okay, and Cooper, make sure we're getting all the way to the frog. 2, ready, and spend it. Go. 2. One more time. Breathe. Make sure you're moving and breathing. Go. Good. Now we're going to add a couple more notes. With the string crossing. Ready, and. Now we can add some more notes now that we've done the string crossing, right? Oops, I did it wrong. Right? 2. Let's add all the way to F sharp. And. Good. Starting out bow, start up bow, start up bow. And. Good. Now what can we do? The last 4 notes.
So little things at a time, we're adding notes, and that repetition really helps students get that. So that's from Spring Breezes by Richard Meyer. That's my youngest group, my grade 2-3 group. Share your favorite tools and apps with your students, because they won't, they're going to look for Minecraft and, Fortnite and all those things that they do. But we have to be able to share the tools that we use, and they're not going to look them up on their own. So share links to their specific app stores. I share links to the iOS and the Android store all the time, my students, or even make QR codes for them to scan that takes them to their app store, because they're not going to look it up on their own. I use Tempo. It's a great metronome. It has lots of features, subdivision, all kinds of things you can do, saving set lists. Obviously, a lot of people are using Tonal Energy Tuner. Lots of neat things, especially the ability to tune with pure intonation, and Coach's Eye, like I already mentioned. And then I'll use another app called AnyTune Pro Plus, and you can load up a tune from your iTunes library and import it, and it'll analyze it, and then you can actually change the tempo without changing the pitch, which is really cool. Or you can actually change the pitch if you want to as well, and then re-export it as a new file. So I'll make some practice tracks in GarageBand, or if I find something that's already been made, I can import it into AnyTune Pro, slow it down to percentage, export it back out, and share that MP3 with my students. I think that the sharing feature is about $5, so totally worth it. All right, so practice journals. If you're maybe have your students go through and create a practice journal, just again getting to think about that process, not the product. What are your goals? What are you working on your performance material, ensemble material if you're doing separate things, new material, developed material, and then some kind of reflection to show you a little closer. So you can make boxes like this. You can make a Google Doc, form it out, anything like that, just to get kids going with a practice journal. Okay, here's a one that's completed, an example. What are your goals? Well, I'm going to increase the tempo of my scales. I'm going to learn a new etude. I'm going to work on my solo, that kind of thing. So just having kids start writing stuff down and becoming mindful of their practice. Really important. Make practicing meaningful. Have your students schedule times and days, a practice plan, and then finally practice. Take that time to do it. And then an important thing is also reflection. I've done a practice reflection assignment too after I've done the vlog, and have the students think about, what did you accomplish? Did you get to accomplish all your goals? What did you struggle with? So in wrapping up, what to do: don't require students to practice for an amount of time. Give them goals, but use your class time to discuss practice techniques and share those strategies with them, because they're not going to figure it out on their own. You have to kind of guide them. But when you take the time and invest that time, make that investment of time to develop some of those strategies and those habits with them. For me too, I don't get to practice a lot because we're busy people, but I do on purpose between classes start practicing something that I'm working on. And as students walk in, they see me practicing. They're like, "Dr. Laux, you have to practice?" Yeah, I still have to practice. This is not one of those things that you just keep, you get and keep. So allow them to learn the material on their own with some guidance, and they're going to take a really good, they're going to take it to their heart, I think, a little bit more. And then provide them with some sample plans. Again, the vlog that I was talking about, I gave them guided questions because I didn't just make them come up with stuff on their own. I kind of helped them along. Demonstrate the practice strategies during rehearsal. Take the time, tell them to what we did in class, do it again at home. And assigning students to complete the journal, like I said, and creating their own practice plan instead of minutes. So there's a couple of the books. Perfect Practice by Dan Heath is the bottom one. It's great, great book as well. And then some articles I referenced, and you can read those on your own. I need to thank Helen Leonard and D'Addario, and also Eastman Strings and my school district. They support me throughout the year, and my principal is just fantastic. So anything that you have questions about, orchestrateacher.net is my site. If you subscribe to the site, every time I put something up new, you'll get a little email reminder there's something new there. It's all free. There's no ads. There's no gimmicks. It's just all my stuff that I put out there for you. Also, feel free to hit me up on Facebook or Twitter. I'd love to be able to keep in contact with you, and my email is there too. So John Ryan, and thank you so much. And the Nat King Cole Generation Hope, I appreciate the invite, and it's been great. Looking forward to some questions.
All right, yeah, we already have a number of them for you. So I'm just going to start and read some of these verbatim. So one of them is, what is your recommended time, day, duration of practice for absolute beginners, middle school, that are receiving their instruments for the first time with online instruction?
Okay, that's a tough question. I would say if they could do a small amount of time every day, even 5 minutes every day is going to be helpful. But every other day, 10 minutes, just short. The more they can take it, the more frequently they can take it out in shorter bursts, the better off they're going to be. And we know that through research that, long practice sessions aren't the answer. It's rigorous, regular practice sessions for small amounts of time.
Yeah, no, very, very good. Another one is, you mentioned a YouTube playlist towards the beginning of the presentation. Do you have that available on your website? Is that something you made?
They're on my school YouTube channel. It's basically, I just make a playlist. So like if we're working on something Baroque, I'll take the piece we're working on, and I'll take a couple other Baroque pieces and throw them on the playlist. And then I share that playlist link with my students. So I guess I could share some examples, but I don't have them available anywhere. I mean, I think they're public, and I think it's Alpharetta Orchestra. Alpharetta Orchestra is our YouTube channel, so that if you go into the playlist, you might actually be able to find them if you find our YouTube channel. But yeah, just get creative, and I'll share funny videos too, with instrument specific. I'll make a viola playlist and share it with just my violas, all the good viola literature, because they're not going to look it up on their own, and it's not going to show up on their feed when they've been watching, other types of videos. So.
Oh yeah, no, definitely very good points. So you were talking about practice logs and practice journals. How much do you get into it? I assume it's more about tracking goals and outcomes versus time, but also a lot of it is, from the old days of you can write one down and hand it in. How would you adjust that towards online learning?
So again, I had them submit a 5-minute practice sample video, And for me, that was more beneficial even than them having them, like regurgitate a line from a book or something like that. But I wanted to see them working towards that goal. So yeah, I think that's a lot more valuable. And again, it's not a summative, evaluation. It's a formative type thing. But that should be our big goal, is being formative. Obviously, I have the standard playing test where you're going to play from here to here in your music, and we're going to assign chairs and all that. The rubric, the kind of what I would call the old-fashioned way of doing digital assignments, if there's such a thing. Yeah.
No, yeah, I mean, if you're already doing video playing quizzes and you have a learning management software where they upload it to, not much really has changed if you have the infrastructure to begin with. If you don't, then
if you're not using Flipgrid, definitely check out Flipgrid. It's a really great platform, and really easy to get kids to. They can record from their phone or their tablet or anything, and the kids can share videos with the whole class, or you can make it private or just for you. But and you can limit their time, so you can if you get a minute, you get 30 seconds, you get 5 minutes, whatever you want to do. Really nice. And then they can kind of customize their videos with emojis and stuff like that too. Makes it more fun for them.
yeah, no, definitely. So you were talking about singing earlier. This person has students who refuses to sing. What do you do in that situation?
I also, I'll sing for them, and it's like, don't I have a beautiful voice? No, I don't. But we're working this. Or I'll say, you can also hum, because nobody's going to see you sing if you hum, and you don't have to sing loudly. It just we were trying to get you to just internalize something, because everything we do is external. We want to know that you really can hear that pitch, But yeah, it is difficult, and like I said, if you're starting beginners, get them singing right away, and they won't know any different. If you're starting trying to do it with 11th graders, they're like, well, I'm not in choir for a reason, Dr. Laux. That's what they tell me. So it can be challenging, but the more that you're willing to do it in front of them, and the more you make it lighthearted and like, we're not gonna, nobody's here to judge you. We're just here to do this. Kids are more willing to do it then, but it is not easy all the time.
And nowadays we're singing in a microphone. I feel like I'm on America's Got Talent or something, All right, so the next one is about Essential Element Interactive. Do kids have to log into EE Interactive in order to use it? All my kids are too young to make an account to do anything.
Right. They can, I believe, you have to be 13. I believe they can do it through their parents. And there's probably more details about that. Hal Leonard does take the privacy part seriously. So yes, they can definitely maybe do it through their parents. And they may have more details on the EEI site if there are questions about that.
Yeah. So you showed a few videos of your classroom, which is great. One person saw a violin finger pattern poster. Do you have a similar one for cello and bass to look
on orchestrateacher.net? They can download those. And then I came up with this thing where I color coded them. I had one of my students fill in, like, I forget which finger pattern it was, but they shaded it yellow for me. And the next one was pink, and the next one was blue. And so when I had some things in my music where kids were having trouble, I had them actually take the yellow marker on the low 2 pattern and highlight like the notes in there. And so they were just, kids that had trouble figuring that out quickly, they could just look up and oh, okay, I see there's a 1-2 pattern. I'm going to color code that. And I would talk to them about doing, which ones to use. But yeah, those are available on the website, and it's a big part of my pedagogy, those born off finger patterns.
Oh yeah, finger patterns, born off, that's all great things. Someone else also noticed that your violin has a pickup on it. Do you amplify it during class?
I haven't done that in a while. That's just my school fiddle, and I ended up having a pickup on it. But yes, it's just a Fishman, I think 100 or 200, I forget the model number, pickup, and I haven't used it a lot in class, but it's there in case I need to.
Yeah, no, definitely. So another one is, what are your thoughts on how to phase students into practicing methods? The methods that you demonstrated seem very geared towards high school playing. What about younger students, like middle school or even elementary?
Some of the ones that I mentioned could be used and adapted for younger students, but definitely the mindset needs to be there for your younger students about practicing, and just should be scaled down, because I think you give students this piece of music and they're very overwhelmed by it, I do that even with my level 6 kids, and I give them, Night on Bald Mountain. They say all these notes. I'm like, hold on, don't worry, we're going to go able to do this. So we just, we put it into sections, and we learn it slowly in sections. So I would say, some of the strategies that I put up there today can be adapted, should be adapted for younger students, because it's important that they start right away with good practice habits, And, younger students, a lot of people are using that karate system or other type of, external, extrinsic awards. Those are going to work really well. Now, hard to do on your own digital to give out candy through the camera. That is not going to work that same way. But, you can do points, you can do, challenges like that will, like a little leaderboard or something like that for students who are going above and beyond. But yeah, developing the habits from day one.
Yeah, no, very, very good. Any ideas on how to encourage advanced middle school students on practicing musical refinement? My advanced students are only interested in lots of fast notes. They don't want to practice how to refine dynamics or tone or things that are not just fast notes.
Yeah, I think I have some students like that as well. Especially my students are kind of in the middle. My top students start to get it. My middle students are like, I just want to play fast notes. So we do a lot of listening. We do a lot of listening on YouTube. We listen to groups that are amazing, and we listen to groups that are not amazing. And they start to realize, like, well, this group looked like they were playing all those notes pretty fast, but they really didn't play with any feeling. They didn't play with any dynamics. And was it really fun to listen to? Not really. So that refinement, just like anything good, it comes in the details. Give me a hamburger. Okay, great. There's nothing on it. But give me a cheeseburger with pickles and onions and lettuce and mayo. Like, that's where that's why it's so good, right? That's what makes something great and makes something okay. Well, you have to kind of, I guess it's just a mindset. And, when you watch these videos, you're not shaming a group or anything like that, but you're definitely comparing it and saying, wow, this one's so much better because why? And we start to listen for those details. And it's the level of standard of quality that you address it's all up to you. You set the standard for intonation, tone, and the more picky you are, the more your students will step up. Because I think ultimately, for most students, they just want to feel good about what they're doing, but they want to also make you happy. So.
No, definitely. I mean, yeah, the students really want to have your I'm missing the word right now, encouragement, your approval. Students really want to have your approval, and that as long as we give their approval, like things will be all right. Let's see, another one is, the frustrating thing is to fix technique issues that have been reinforced by practice. Besides videos, what would you do? By the way of color code things, I have 6 different colors of highlighters for different finger patterns.
Awesome. Go, run me the question one more time, the very beginning of it.
So the frustrating thing is to fix technique issues when they have been reinforced by videos. Besides videos, what would you do?
I have students, like, we talk about the straight wrist, we talk about the bow hand and the fingers and the shape and all that. And so I'll have, students kind of check each other for the checkpoints too. And peer pressure is a huge thing. So I have students do a lot of peer assessment. We'll do that not just for technical issues, we'll do it for musical issues too. So, okay, cellos, you're going to play these measures. Everybody else is going to listen. You're going to do a fist to 5. Fist to 5 is something that, you're going to rate, like, how good is it? And then if they give it a 3, and then you call on that person, well, why did you give them the 3? What were they doing? What could be better? You could do that with technique things. You could do that with excerpts. You could do that with tone, intonation, rhythm. You can break it down into small things or holistic things as well. So
yeah.
I've done a lot of peer working in groups too.
So we have time for one more question, and I think this has been a common theme, this whole teaching from home situation. Actually has also been a common question with our previous presenters. Any suggestions on how to teach tuning to beginners or to students who are not familiar with tuning, especially with pegs?
Yes. Obviously we're starting with the fine tuners, but when the pegs are out, I demonstrate to my students a lot that when we take the peg and we turn it just this much, the pitch goes up a whole lot. And then you take the fine tuner and you turn it this much and it goes up the same. So we got to be very, very careful. I always, I have my violin here. I always work to secure the instrument with my legs, And then I'm telling them that they're going to be turning that, putting on a reference pitch, because obviously they can't do it from scratch, right? They put on the reference pitch and continuously pluck that string. So if it's really low, continuously pluck that string and move it very slowly. And they also have to push and turn. So, I don't know, like I tell them that your peg has to be like a screw, so it have to be thread. It's like it's threaded, even though it's not. But again, just to keep strings from breaking excessively, it's just keeping that pitch going and while turning. So I don't know how to teach it from scratch that way. That's super challenging. But and I'm sure there's any problems. But I would definitely work out with your local music dealer. If there's one close to you, that tell them, ask them if it's okay if students come in, and obviously share that information with them, so that way if there are problems and you can't do it, that they can get to the store and get that taken care of. But that's one of the definite problems, and I'm still working on that auto tuning violin peg idea. Got to patent that one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's teaching beginners, and I mean, there's many issues, there's many problems with teaching virtually, but teaching beginners and teaching how to tuning are probably up there on how do you do? What do you do?
One of my colleagues, and he mentioned with his beginners, he's going to go more of a Suzuki style approach, because he feels that would be more catered to the individual. And you start out with the instrument and everything, but those small bows, as opposed to what we might do in a method book nowadays, are a little bit larger bow. And working on that music reading is just taking that away and doing a lot of rote teaching without a book or anything like that to start, because that might be a better fix. I kind of agree with them.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Charles, for taking the time to speak with us today and sharing your ideas and information. You see right there, everyone in front of the screen is all of his information. If we did not get to your questions, if you email him directly, he will be more than happy to answer the questions for you. Charles, do you have any other final parting words for us?
Thank you again for having me, and I wish you guys all the best in your start of the school year, whether it's going to be virtual or face-to-face, or a combination of both. Good luck. Hang in there. We're going to get through this year. I guarantee that we'll be back to normal, hopefully as soon as possible. But just keep going and stay strong. And just the biggest thing that your students need is your support. They need your understanding and your caring, and keep them motivated. Make it fun. I'm going to be doing a lot of short little, pop tunes and all kinds of things to keep my kids motivated, because that's what we have to do, is just keep them going. Get through the.
All right. Thank you very much.